Play ball. Hot off the press, handicappers from WagerTalk, Sports Memo, and the Gold Sheet have collaborated on the 2023 WagerTalk Media MLB Betting Guide. From World Series odds to regular season win totals and everything in between, this year's betting guide features previews on all 30 teams, all 6 divisions, and season-long awards like the Cy Young, MVP, and Rookie of the Year. Each preview contains key roster acquisitions and departures to help you get up to speed before opening day. Visit wt.buzz/MLB23 to download your free guide, and we'll see you in the batter's box.
Welcome into the NBA Tip-Off Show here at WagerTalk TV. I'm Megan Payton. The boys joining me today, Tony Finn, Dwayne Bryant, Ronald Kabang, here to break down some NBA action. The madness has started in March for the NCAA tournament, but there is still plenty going around on the association. We're going to break down the games here, but first get the panel's view and thoughts on their picks up at WagerTalk.com or Sports Memo. Tony Finn, start us out. How are you doing this week?
Great. It's a good week, right? This is a week that I guess I should say most who live here in the Mojave leave because it gets so crazy, especially if you live close to the Strip or downtown. But for me, I don't. As a resident, a long-time resident here, and a long-time employee in this region, I always find this weekend pretty fascinating. A lot of interesting people. A lot of great basketball games, maybe not so profitable on a Thursday and Friday because of the craziness, but a lot of fun nonetheless.
Absolutely. Ronald, how are you, and what do you have going on at Sports Memo?
Yeah, I got quite a bit going on over at sportsmemo.com right now. 4 plays up, and I really like today's slate. So, hopefully things keep going in the right direction. I went 2-1 yesterday, 3-1 the day before. So, positive week so far. Like I said, I'm seeing the board pretty well. Hopefully we just keep going in that direction to close out the season.
Dwayne, how are you? What do you have going on this week?
It's been a nerve-wracking day already. I mean, the tournament started. I had 2 early plays, had a first half under West Virginia, won by a point, could have lost at the buzzer. Had a big play on the first half under Virginia, won that by 2 points, could have lost it at the buzzer. So the breaks have gone my way today so far. I hope that continues. I've got 1 NBA play up right now. I'm off a 4-0 NBA sweep last night, 12-3, 80% my last 15. And tonight's play is backed by a bunch of situational angles that have gone a combined 29-2, 94% this season. You can get that play on my page right now, Dwayne Bryant at WagerTalk.com.
Look, and now's the time where a lot of people will mute their TV when it comes to NBA. They're all in on the March Madness, and I get it, but we are here to find some value, some bets, and make you some money in the association. So let's start with our contrarian play of the day. The gods like Magic +8. Orlando heads to Phoenix. Tip-off at 10 p.m. Eastern. Suns are favored by 8 points, total 228. Neither of these teams are playing good basketball right now. Magic coming off a loss. Suns on a 3-game losing streak. Can we take advantage of this Magic team while the Suns are without Kevin Durant? They cannot score the last few games. Ronald, what's your take on this one?
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with the contrarian gods on this one here. I was breaking this down earlier, and one thing that I was really looking towards was the Suns team total under. So that kind of correlates with the Orlando Magic +8 points. One thing that I looked at specifically was the Suns in revenge angle situation this season. Magic actually beat the Suns outright at home earlier this season, 114-97. Suns, they're not good in revenge situations this season, just 8-10 straight up, 7-11 against the spread. The Magic, I know they haven't been shooting pretty well. Their offense has been struggling, but so have the Suns. Since KD has been out, they've been struggling offensively. Really been playing a slower pace as well. So that bodes well for the tighter line here for the Dogs, so that there's not a lot of margin for error for the Suns to cover this larger spread on a slow-paced game, and a game that we're probably going to see a lot of focus on the defensive side of the ball. One thing, again, on the Magic side here that kind of pushed me towards looking in that direction in road games following an ATS loss. So in road games following a game where they didn't cover the spread, they're 8-4 straight up, 9-2 against the spread this season. They're winning and covering the last 7 instances outright. In that streak, they beat the Sixers, they beat the Warriors, both teams who really are pretty dominant at home. They also beat the Blazers during that streak, and the Blazers were peaking during that time in January. So to me, I can only look towards the Magic here. I'm not 100% sure that they get that outright win like they have been in this current situation previously, but I think they can stay within 8 points here.
Magic 16-9-1 against the spread versus Western Conference opponents. They already beat the Suns once this season. The offense has been really well the last 3 games, despite the losses, putting up at least 120 or more the past 3. Dwayne, any takes in this one?
No, I always like being on these NBA shows with Ronald because him and I are both so into the SDQL database with our NBA handicapping, and I'm always interested to hear what he comes up with. Phoenix, like you said, has lost 3 straight, but losing to the Kings, Bucks, and at Golden State isn't completely terrible. Being at home against a sub 500 opponent sure looks like a good get right spot before heading out onto the road for a few games. On the other side, Orlando's fresh off getting embarrassed by the Spurs a couple nights ago. I mean, if getting your butts handed to you by San Antonio doesn't serve as a motivator, I don't know what will. The Magic find themselves in a spot where they've actually been very profitable this season, and that's when they're on the road off a loss in which they allowed their opponent to shoot better than 50% from the field, despite the average line being Magic plus 5.5 or plus 5.8. They're 6-3 straight up and 7-1-1 against the spread in this spot. They're also 4-1 straight up and 5-0 against the spread the last 5 times they played on the road off a road loss. And they've also fared well on the road against teams that shoot three-pointers well. 8-3-1 ATS this season on the road against teams that have hit 37% of their three-point attempts or better on the season. And 2 of the 3 losses were when Orlando was facing the same team for the second straight game, and that's not the case here. So I'll agree with the contrarian gods here and lean with the Magic to at least keep this one close.
I'm not going to lie. I'm afraid for this Suns team right now. They're falling apart on both sides. They have no perimeter presence outside of Devin Booker, so the scoring's gone down. Bottom 5 in defensive rating the last 3 games. This seems like a perfect contrarian spot for Magic plus 8. Tony, are you riding with the gods?
I'm not. I am not. Well, I should be. I agree with everything, almost everything that's been said. Here's the problem, and that is Orlando. Phoenix 0-3 straight up against the spread. They've been pretty bad without Durant, and you would think that possibly it would be an offensive issue. And while it has been some offense, it's been mostly the fact that they're not defending, which is a surprise. They could defend without Durant. This team did trade away Bridges. They did to get KD, but they're still better defensively than what they've been. Here's the problem: Orlando 3-8 against the spread in the last 11 games, and this is a team that were 5.5-point favorites over San Antonio last game. We talked a little bit about the show, and it made sense because San Antonio is tanking, right? However, they lost by 18 points. This is a game that I have no interest in even being in. If I was, and for the sake of the show, I'm still on Phoenix minus this touchdown. Although not with a big smile on my face and ready to walk to the window, certainly.
Magic and Suns tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern. Gods are back in Orlando here. It's time for us to move on to our featured game of the night. We're looking at the Sacramento Kings at Brooklyn, taking on the Nets. Tip off at 7:40 p.m. Eastern. Nets are 2.5-point favorite, and the total's at 238. The Sacramento team heads over to the Big Apple on a second leg of a back-to-back. It's a quick trip. They've been playing really well, all offense for the Kings as of late. They lead the league in scoring. However, Brooklyn post-KD, post-Kyrie trade, they've done a good job at stopping three-pointers. Can we see this happen, and can we find a way to back the favorite Brooklyns against the Kings, Ronald?
Yeah, this one from a side perspective, I think it's pretty tough because I think they're both coming off of bad situational spots here, right? The Nets coming home after a long 5 game road trip. The Kings on the second leg of back-to-back games. Also, one thing that I've been really looking at was when teams go from east to west or west to east, their second game on that trip. One thing that I learned earlier this season, off listening post-game interviews is coaches really worry about that second game off a long flight. They typically say that the second game off a long flight from east to west or west to east is where they kind of had that jet lag, and that's going to be this game tonight. So offensively, I mean, you see the Kings, they went under yesterday against the Bulls. um, Today I kind of expect the same thing here. I don't know what I want to do on the as far as the spread side. It's really hard to fade the Kings and how they're playing right now, but at the same time, I think offensively, both teams, I can see both teams struggling in this game here specifically. The Kings, second game of a road trip, they're 7-0 to the under. We look at them in non-conference road games as well, 10-3 to the under. So a lot of things typically look at the Kings and say over automatically just because of pace of play, their offensive efficiency. But in certain situations, they are an underplay. And on the net side, they've been struggling offensively post All Star break, 28th in the league offensive rated team post All Star break, and they've only played 2 games at home after the break as well. And both of those games went under the total by margin. One of them actually went under by 42 points here. Um, I think the Nets' only path to victory is to play solid defense, and I think that's going to lead towards an under game.
The Nets have been number one in defense the past 6 games. I think big man Nick Claxton could cause some issues for the Sacramento offense. Claxton has done a great job at protecting the rim. He's also putting up points, though. Look at him to perhaps have a double double. Tony Finn, any thoughts on this matchup?
Um, I like some. I like some baskets to be made in this game. Actually,
Yeah.
since Jacques Vaughn has taken over, it's been kind of a hit and miss with him and the roster. He's settled into this particular first and second rotation, and this team's playing faster. They're playing faster, uh, and they may show that they're playing their defensive metrics are really good. A little bit deceiving because of who they've played, but 5 out of 6 games they came in the last game. I had the over 233 with Oklahoma City and Brooklyn. And Brooklyn didn't hold up their end of the deal. They scored 101 against OKC, which is a strange because OKC's they're not a defensive juggernaut. They don't protect the rim very well. Neither does Brooklyn. I like the over in a game with 2 teams that do not defend the rim very well, and both teams getting out in transition. Now, that said, Fox has had some issues. He's dinged up a little bit, but this is a pretty important game. A couple of games on the board tonight that are pretty important as far as postseason brackets or postseason seedings go. And not only do I like the Kings, but I like over the total in this game.
This is the first home game for the Nets after a 5 game road trip. 9 of the last 10 have been away for Brooklyn. Dwayne, is this enough time and enough rest to disrespect the Kings by not laying points with Sacramento?
I don't have a strong opinion on this game, no matter how you slice it. I have so much conflicting situational data from side and total perspective that there's no way I'm playing this game. But here's some examples of what I was able to find. The Kings are 0-2 straight up ATS on the road, playing their 3rd game in 4 days, losing by an average of 13.5 points per game. This is a good spot to say that I don't concern myself with sample size. My only concern is the recency of the data and the margins involved. So 0-2 doesn't grab my attention, but the 13.5 points per game margin does. The Kings are also 1-4 straight up in ATS on the road against non-conference opponents with a winning record. They lost those games by an average of 9.8 points per game. But the Kings are also 3-0 straight up in ATS on the road after holding their previous opponent to worse than 43% shooting from the field, winning those games by an average of 14.3 points per game. And on the other side, the Nets are 4-0 ATS at home against non-conference opponents with a winning record. They're also 3-0 straight up in ATS as a home favorite of -6 or less against teams with a winning record, winning by an average of 12 points per game. But then the negative, the Nets are also 0-2 straight up in ATS, playing without rest at home against teams with a winning record. There's more examples, and it's the same way on the total of the game. If my life depended on it, I'd probably take the over, but I'm not playing this game.
Totals at 238 right now. That's Kings versus Nets tip off at 7:40 p.m. Eastern. Let's talk totals. Let's move on to our overtime game of the night. We've got the Indiana Pacers at Milwaukee Bucks. Tip off at 8:10 p.m. Eastern. Bucks minus 12 and a half. The total opened at 235. It's up to 238. You can find it at 239 on some books still. And all signs point to the over for me. Indiana is 7-1 to the over against winning records this season. Milwaukee 8-2 to the over the last 10 against losing records this season. Tony, tell me why I shouldn't bet the over here.
Well, I would say this. I wouldn't argue with you, actually, on betting the over with Indiana and Milwaukee in this game. Indiana, damaged at full strength, has been inconsistent. I think that's an understatement, to say the least. But with question marks around Halliburton, Hield, McConnell, Turner, as well as Mathurin and Duarte already being out, there's over half this team, and well over 70% of key personnel are questionable to play. Now, that said, Brook Lopez is also questionable for the Bucks. He could miss this game. So I like this over, especially if Brooks Lopez isn't in there defending the paint and scoring cheap second chance buckets. But I would like to have Halliburton playing and leading the point if I'm going to be over the total in an Indiana game, period. That said, I'm not going to argue with you feeling like everything leads and screams over. I'd play over as well.
Yeah, 3 starters for the Pacers questionable right now, and they are 12th, the Indiana Pacers, in the East. If there's an argument for potentially tanking, this could be them. Maybe stay off of it as a whole. Dwayne, any thoughts for the total in this one?
Yeah, this is a tough game to cap for me because, as Tony mentioned, last I checked, Halliburton, Hield, and Turner were all questionable. Halliburton and Turner have both sat out the last 2 games. Indiana's played 5 games this season where they both sat out, and they went under in 3 of the 5 games, including 2 of 3 on the road, and by an average of 8.4 points per game. Having said that, the over is 4-1 when Indiana's on the road after shooting under 42% from the field in its previous game. That's by an average of 10.1 points per game and includes 4-0 to the over in the last 4. On the Bucks side of the equation, the over is 4-0 when they're at home off 3 or more road wins. And if we take out the overtime period versus Boston, we still have a nice margin of going over by 9.25 points per game. The over is also 5-1 and 5-0 in the last 5 when the Bucks are at home after holding his last opponent to 105 points or less. And these games went over by an average of 7.25 points per game. So another solid margin there. So I do lean to the over here, but I need to wait and see who is going to be on the court for Indiana.
The past 2 meetings between the Pacers and the Bucks, the over has hit. The over is hit in Indiana's last 4 of 5. For the Bucks, they've split it 3-3 in their last 6. Ronald Kabang, riding with the over or taking the under? Oh, we can't hear you, Ronald. There we go.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I think I'm going to be going towards the over in this one as well. I looked at the last 2 matchups between these 2 teams. Both games, like you mentioned, went over by a pretty good margin. In both games, Halliburton didn't play either. So it almost seems like it doesn't matter if Hallie doesn't play against this Bucks team, that it should still go over. I think the pace of play goes in that direction. I think the Bucks, knowing that they could just pretty much beat this team, probably don't really focus on the defensive side of the ball here. They just want to, play ball, get the win, and that means scoring points here. I think that's the type of situation that I see it right now. I think the Bucks are very confident. They're in good position, first in the East. I just don't think there's going to be a lot of defense here. I think the Pacers side, they're actually 4th in offensive rating post All-Star break. Obviously, some of those games were with Halliburton, but I just think that the way that they have been as dogs this season and how they play in that type of situation, they actually are one of the better teams in that road dog situation. They're 2-1 straight up and against the spread as double-digit dogs, and it's mainly due to their offense. So I can expect them to possibly put up a good chunk of points here and force the Bucks to play a quicker pace as well. Pacers with 2 days of rest, 8-6 to the over, 11-3 against the spread. If they keep it close, I think the Bucks will probably push the pace a lot here, with or without Brook Lopez, with or without Halliburton on the Pacers side. I can only look towards the over here.
Total right now 238. Bucks laying 12.5 against the Pacers. Tip off at 8:10 p.m. Eastern. It's now time to move on to our best bets sections. We are not doing dogs of the day with a short slate of NBA. Best bets are very simple. 60 seconds on the clock. The panel can do whatever they want in that minute, but they've got to give us a best bet and they have to get out in time. We're going to have Dwayne Bryant start us off. Your 60 seconds starts now.
Well, don't forget to head over to my page, Dwayne Bryant, WagerTalk.com, grab my NBA best bet for tonight. As for my best bet for the show, I am going to go over in the Denver-Detroit game. Denver is in a funk right now, and they own the NBA's worst defensive rating over its last 5 games. The over is 2-0 when Denver is a double-digit road favorite. The 2 games went over by 12 and 12.5 points. And as I said earlier, I don't concern myself with sample size. I'm focused on the recency of the data and the margins involved. On the Pistons side, the over is 2-0 when they are a double-digit home dog. They went over by 43.5 and 13.5 points. The over is also 6-1 when Detroit is in a non-conference home game after allowing its previous opponent to shoot better than 50% from the field. Taking out the 2 overtime periods, we still have a healthy margin of 11.6 points per game. And lastly, over the last 3 seasons, the over is 28 and 13, 68% when we have a double-digit non-conference road favorite. Take the over.
We'll let that 1 second slide. I like Denver over. They've been over the last 3 road games. Tony Finn, you've got 60 seconds, and your time starts now.
We're going to go to a game that we discussed already, and that's the Kings and the Nets. First off, the Nets, 39-30. Kings, 3rd place in the Western Conference. Both of these teams really, while the Nets own a guaranteed spot right now in 6th, their slate is going to be challenging, and they're playing to win. There's no doubt about that as far as Jacques Vaughn being in charge, too. Kings, they have a chance to basically get out and get on top and be the number 2 seed, not the 3 seed that they currently on, but a 2 seed over the Memphis Grizzlies. The Kings, listen, they've been really good at scoring with no rest. Brooklyn, very pedestrian with a rest advantage. I like the Kings. I like the over in this matchup. And I like Dinwiddie averaging, or at least to go up and above his rebounds and points tonight.
Look at that. With 10 seconds to spare, we should just take a pause and everyone can do whatever they want for the next 10 seconds. Just kidding. Yeah. We've got to talk player props, and Ronald Kabang has a player prop for his best bet. Your 60 seconds, Ronald, starts now.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Jalen Williams over his 8.5 rebounds and assists. I did look at his PRA. I know he's been scoring a bunch lately, but I don't like the fact that the Raptors are limiting opposing forwards with in points. So I looked primarily towards his rebounds and assists. He's gone over, like I said, in his 6 of his last 7 games. He's consistently getting 30-plus minutes per game. He rarely gets into foul trouble, and they're going to need his body here to play some solid defense against the lengthy Toronto team. He's averaging 7.6 potential assists per game, 10.1 rebound chances. And for the other day, he had 10 assists alone versus the Spurs. He got 10 rebounds alone versus the Brooklyn Nets. Now that goes to show that he can get over this 8.5 on rebounds or assists alone. But you're giving me this number with both stats combined. I got to take the over 8.5. I do got 10 seconds, so I want to shout out Sports Memo. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we got the NBA Triple-Double show that I host with Moneyline Matt. And I forgot who our host is tomorrow, but 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time.
We love it. Great stuff from our panel over here for NBA today. NBA tip-off. Now is the time to take a screenshot of today's picks recaps. Get these best bets locked and loaded, all at WagerTalk.com and Sports Memo. We appreciate you joining us. Stay with us, by the way. We've got last call coming up. We're going to talk some NCAA March Madness craziness. Stay with us. We'll see you next time here at WagerTalk TV.
Play ball. Hot off the press, handicappers from WagerTalk, Sports Memo, and the Gold Sheet have collaborated on the 2023 WagerTalk Media MLB Betting Guide. From World Series odds to regular season win totals and everything in between, this year's betting guide features previews on all 30 teams, all 6 divisions, and season-long awards like the Cy Young, MVP, and Rookie of the Year. Each preview contains key roster acquisitions and departures to help you get up to speed before opening day. Visit wt.buzz/MLB23 to download your free guide, and we'll see you in the batter's box.